Hi, I'm Gardner from Easy Racers, and you've just received your boxes with your new Tour Easy. And we're going to show you how to put the bike together. So first we're going to open the boxes up. There's a pretty new bicycle. Once you've gotten your new bike out of the bag, you're still going to have to untie a few components. We have cable ties that hold the handlebars onto the frame during the shipping. So you want to make sure everything's unwrapped. You'll also need a couple of tools that aren't supplied, an adjustable wrench and a pair of scissors. We do supply some wrenches for putting the rest of the bike together. So let's just finish up cutting cable ties and a few other things, and then you'll be ready to assemble the bike. It'll probably take us an hour or so just to get the bike ready to ride, and it could take another 45 minutes or so to install all of your accessories like the front fender, rear rack, windshield, but it's going to be fun. So just come along with us, and if there's anything you don't understand, keep that remote handy and just back it up and go over it again to make sure that you get it together right. Finish up unwrapping here. We get all the protective material off the chain so we can assemble the bike. Okay, be a little careful here now. You could scratch or nick your pretty new paint job. Even though it's very tough epoxy paint, sharp scissors or knife could scratch it. Well, just wanted to show you all of your accessories, extra parts, your tools, instructions, and guarantee. We got a fender, spare inner tube, 3 wrenches, pedals, toe clips and strap, rack, and water bottles. And that'll about do it for the accessories, except of course we have the seat and wheels and the zipper fairing to go on the bike. So now we're going to start with the frame of the bicycle. One of the first steps is to make sure that the rear derailleur gets mounted properly. We're going to make sure that the chain is not caught on anything, and then with our supplied wrench we're going to screw it to the derailleur hanger dropout. We have to make sure that the adjusting screw clears the little tang on the derailleur dropout hanger. So we'll turn the derailleur kind of up, making sure that it goes in good and straight, threads in properly. There it goes. It's going in real good. We're making sure it's up high enough so that the screw is cleared. We tighten it up, and now it swings back and forth, and it's spring-loaded, but it's mounted correctly. In order to install the front wheel, we need to cut the little cable tie that's holding the front brake lever. Now that releases the brake lever, the brakes, so we can put the wheel in the front forks. We'll take the quick release lever and take the nut off the quick release lever along with the little spring on the end. I'm going to lift the front of the bike up and set the front forks right down over the axle of the wheel. Now we'll put the quick release lever in from the left side. We'll take the spring and the nut, insert the small end of the spring onto the quick release lever. We'll tighten up the nut until we get some resistance on the quick release lever at about a straight out 90-degree angle. Now when we tighten up the lever, the wheel is good and tight and won't fall off. Now we're going to slide the wheel in to the frame between the brake shoes first, and then we want to make sure that the top run of the chain goes on top of the smallest gear. And then we're going to kind of pull the wheel back into the dropout slots, just like that. As long as the chain was up on the front gear and on the back gear, we've got it good. Now I'll take the quick release lever and we're going to put it through the wheel just like we did on the front one. Lever goes in from the left side, the little spring goes on, and the nut goes on. Tighten up the nut, making sure the rear quick release is tight. Make sure the wheel is all the way back in the dropout. Shake it a little bit, pull back, and then tighten the quick release good and tight. Now the bike will sit on its own wheels with the help of the kickstand. We're going to cut the ties that hold the handlebar on. And we will insert the handlebar into the front forks. We'll turn the stem and take and just insert right into the front fork. Now we'll get the wrench that'll tighten it up. With the stem inserted just past the line that says maximum height, about a ½ inch past the maximum height, we're going to turn the front wheel so it's lined up square with the handlebars and snug the stem expander bolt down a little bit. Now we'll come back and check, are we good and square with the wheel? We can turn the handlebar still a little bit to make sure it's good and square, and we'll tighten it up a little more. Now we need to tighten the bolt that holds the handlebar fore and aft a little bit. We'll come back and make final adjustments once we get the seat on the bike. That's good and snug. Now we're going to put the seat on the bike. I'm going to align these two bolts with the two holes in the frame, and we'll set the seat right down onto the frame like so. I'll let the brace bar come down in the back, and then I'll take the nut and lock washers and put them underneath onto the bolts that are sticking through the frame. Now we're going to attach the rear adjusting clamps to the dropout eyelets. We have two different lengths of bolts. If you're not going to use the rack, use the shorter bolts in the clamps. And if you're going to use the rear rack, we'll use the longer bolts in the clamps. So the clamps just screw right into the little eyelets. And we'll use our 8mm wrench and snug them right up on there. To adjust the seat, it slides forward and backwards. There's 4 inches of sliding adjustment, and we'll tighten it up at the appropriate place with the 2 supplied wrenches. Now we're going to put the pedals on. There's a right-handed threaded pedal and a left-handed threaded pedal. They'll be marked R and L. The right-handed threaded pedal goes on the right side of the bike. We'll just screw it right in there. Now we'll tighten it up with the wrench. Just screw it right on in there. Snug up the pedal good and tight. After the first 100 miles, you're going to want to recheck and make sure your pedals are good and tight. We recommend that you probably make your first rides without using the supplied toe clips and straps. That way, if you need to get your feet on the ground quick, you can. You may, at a later date, want to change these pedals out for your own clipless, lock-in type of pedals like a SPD Shimano. Now we're going to make the final check on handlebar adjustment and seat adjustment. We're going to make sure the handlebars are square with the front wheel. And then they look real good, so I'm going to tighten them up. Final tight, real good tight. Now I'm going to sit back and pull the handlebars back until they feel comfortable. Not too low, because we want to make sure that we're going to clear our knees with the handlebars. That feels comfortable, so I'll tighten the other handlebar clamping bolt here. make it good and tight so that you can actually lift the bike up without the handlebars moving. That's the test. Now we're going to test for the right leg reach. We need to have the pedal far enough away from the seat that you can lock your knee and just barely put your heel on the back side of the pedal. Now when you put the ball of your foot on the pedal, that gives you the right leg reach. Looks good. Whoops, I see a little mistake I made. Why, even us experts make a little mistake now and then. These cables should be on this side of the handlebar gooseneck stem. So I'm going to loosen up the bolt. And the expander bolt has a wedge in it. So we're going to need to break that wedge loose by smacking it with something. Now we can pull the handlebar right up out of the fork again, holding the wheel here, lift it up. I'm going to move the cables over to this side, put the handlebar back in there, make sure it's down to the right level, snug it up again, check the square, and we've got it. All right, I hope by now that you've taken a test ride on your bike. You don't need to put your fender on just to take a ride on the bike. But if you want to put the fender on, you're going to have to take the front brake mounting bolt loose, slip the fender bracket on the back of the brake bolt. There are some instructions that come with the fender. Read them carefully. Now we're going to stick the brake with the fender back through the fork. Now we've got some little fender mounting tabs that will go down at the bottom of the front forks. They mount right down here, if you can see where I'm hooking them up to the eyelets at the bottom of the fork. So we're going to screw that into the eyelet right there, and we'll just snug that up a little bit. The second nut actually controls the tension on the fender brace back there. Now I'll also adjust this one down and screw it in place. Once we've got it screwed in place, then we can go back and tighten everything up real good. All right, I'm screwing that in place. Going to snug down the other adjuster fender brace. Now we'll tighten up the nut on the back of the brake right here. Put the nut on, screw it up tight, and we'll have her there in a minute. Okay, we want to make sure the brake gets centered when we tighten it up. Then we want to adjust the little stays in and out or up and down a little bit. Make sure we have clearance all the way around. We can turn the fender a little to make sure that it clears. Adjust the back end of the fender so maybe you can just barely get your little finger up underneath the back side of the fender. We want more clearance in the front. You should be able to get your thumb in the front. So just take your time, adjust it up, get everything tight, and you'll be okay. I'm going to demonstrate how to quick release the brake lever and the quick release wheel lever in order to remove and reinstall the front wheel. We're going to demonstrate first our SS model Tour Easy. To release the brake, squeeze the brake pads together and pull the adjuster barrel right out to the side. There's a flat on the adjuster barrel that allows it to slide in and out of the slot. Now that makes more clearance so the wheel can drop out when we release the wheel quick release lever. You will need to turn the nut several turns loose in order to clear the safety catches on the bottom of the forks that the Consumer Product Safety Commission now mandates. To reinstall the front wheel, just line it back up in the slots and tighten up the quick release nut. Pull the lever home once it starts to tighten at about a 90-degree angle. Then we just reinstall the adjuster barrel in the slot. We check the brake, make sure it works good, and we're done. That's how we do the SS model brake. We're going to demonstrate how to quick release the brakes on our EX model Tour Easy. In order to release the brakes, we need to squeeze the brake calipers together and pull the little cable barrel out of the end of the brake. That's how it releases, very wide, so we can drop the front wheel out easily. Just like our SS model, we turn the quick release nut a few turns open and the front wheel will come right off. To reinstall, just drop the front wheel back in the slots, tighten up your quick release nut, and then pull the quick release lever home good and tight. Reinstall the brakes by pushing the calipers together, and then we just pull our little barrel right back into place like that. Check the brakes by squeezing the brake lever and we can see that it works fine. We'd like to demonstrate our new Coolback mesh seat. It gives very good support and full breathability. Another feature of this seat is a separately adjustable backrest. Just by loosening up the lower clamps, this side is the same as the other. Now we can move the seat back separately, up and down, to your own preference. Once you get it adjusted, just tighten your clamps up again. The base of this seat does adjust like our other seat. There's 2 bolts on the underside of the frame. If you loosen these 2 bolts up here, you can slide the seat back and forth about 3.5 inches. Here's a nice new Super Zipper windshield fairing. This will help you go faster, make it easier to ride in headwinds, keep you warmer in the wintertime. It unrolls. And we also have the nuts and bolts. Just lay your nuts and bolts out. And what we're going to do is expose the bolt holes on the windshield. And we'll take a bolt and put it right through, say, the middle hole to start with on each side on top. And then we're going to take it up to the handlebar mounting levers. We'll set the windshield down over the front forks, swing out this mount here, push the bolt right through the mounting hole. Same thing on the other side. And we'll get our other 2 bolts. We're going to come from the inside on the bottom ones through the mounting hole, peel the paper back a little bit. We'll set the windshield right on the rubber mount, the bolt right on through. Then you can start to put the nuts onto your zipper windshield. Tighten them up until they're snug. Then we'll put the nuts on the upper one. Okay, now the windshield's basically on there, but we want to adjust it a little bit. The mounts that are on the brake levers can be tightened up from the bottom to hold the windshield away from the brake levers and give it a nice round shape on the top. So I'm holding it away and tightening it up. Same thing on this side. I'm going to push it a little forward and tighten up the bolt. And we tighten up our nuts here. There. Looks good. Now if the windshield doesn't square up to your satisfaction, make sure that the handlebars are square with the front wheel. It's also possible to loosen the brake lever and rotate the brake lever up and down a little bit to shape the windshield if need be. Now we're going to mount the rear Blackburn rack. We need to use the longer bolts that we've supplied for the bottom clamp dropout mounting points. And we'll just double up with the rack on the inside of the lower clamp. And then it just goes right into the little threaded eyelet, just like before. We take our wrench and snug that one up a little bit. And then we'll go over to the other side and do the same thing at the other side. Fairly simple. Just be careful. You don't want to cross-thread the bolt. Okay, that one's in there. Now we're going to move up top. We take the little plastic-coated clamp and we take the short bolt and nut and mount it right through there. Put the washer and the lock nut on the back side. And there, all you have to do is tighten it up. Do the same thing on the other side, and we'll have the rack mounted up. Now, you'll also need to tighten up the little screws that hold the slider clamps. But wait till you get these bolts snugged down. Make sure everything's squared up and aligned. A word of caution, don't put the rack on the bike until you get the seat adjusted properly for you. Once the rack is installed and tightened up, it's harder to adjust the seat. It'll limit the amount of range on the seat unless you loosen up the upper rack mounting points and slide them up or down while you're moving the seat. Before your first test ride, you're going to want to check and make sure that all the gears are working. I'm just going to lean it over on the kickstand. You could have a friend lift up on the back of the bike, turning the pedal, shifting the right-hand shifter, which works the 7 rear gears. Now we're all the way up to second gear. Now we're all the way up to first gear, the starting gear. Now we could shift the front chainring also. Now we're in the middle chainring up front. That would be a good gear for your first ride. One of the secrets to keeping your new bike shifting well is to make sure that the adjustments on the rear derailleur maintain the proper tension. Your rear derailleur cable is going to stretch some during the break-in period. This wire controls how the derailleur moves. So if this wire stretches a little bit, the derailleur is going to lag to the outside and not shift properly. The way to account for a stretched derailleur wire is to turn this little barrel knob around the derailleur housing. If you turn it counterclockwise, it will fractionally move the derailleur inward to account for a stretched wire. Probably you'll have to make an adjustment like this several times during the first 100 miles or so in a break-in period. If you know how to do it yourself, you don't have to take it to a bike shop. Maintenance is pretty standard on this bike. Most of the components are just like a regular bicycle. But during the first couple of 100 miles, there are a few things that you'll want to check on. The rear wheel is built very strongly. We use a tandem rim, and we use strong stainless steel spokes. But the spokes will stretch a little bit. The nipples will seat a little bit. The rim will maybe go out of true a little bit in the first 100, 150 miles. Would be a good idea for the wheel to be checked for true and enough tension after 150 miles or so. If you can't do it yourself, have a bike shop do it for you, and then the wheel will last a long time. Chain maintenance is like on any bicycle. There's enough grease on the chain that you won't have to bother with it for at least 3 weeks, but eventually you'll have to start to lubricate the chain. Derailleurs, brake pivot points also need occasional oiling. So just take care of it like you would any bicycle. And you should make sure that your tires are pumped up to the rated pressure that's printed on the side of the tire. Whoa, 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 this thing is funny. Start again. Left, right, left. Pick your feet up an inch and steer the bike. Remember, keep your arms relaxed and steer with a light touch. Lean back and relax and it'll be easier. Once you've practiced walking the bike with your feet, then you can try to power off. Push strongly and go.